So welcome everyone to the first session in our 2023 Energy Careers and Leadership webinar series. This series is organized by the UH Energy and the Energy Coalition, and we welcome you all. We also have a co-presenter, the Texas Industrial Energy Efficiency Program, and we thank them for their support. Next slide, please. Are you able to advance, Rutuja? I'm Alan Rossiter. I'm Executive Director, External Relations and Educational Program Development for UH Energy, and that's my face. Next slide, please. So we're very fortunate to have a wonderful cadre of instructors or presenters for this series. And you see here the first group of these. We have today's presenter, Rey Banatao, who will be telling you a lot more about himself and about obviously his topic, which is Fall in Love with the Problem, Lessons in Moonshot Taking, Climate and Entrepreneurship. Next week, we have Don Victory, who is the founder and chair of Energy Mentors, and he was previously upstream chief process engineer at ExxonMobil, and he'll be talking about defeating career anxiety. The week after that, Sharon Nolan, who is an Eastman Fellow with Eastman Chemical, and she will be talking about From Raising Cows to Removing Carbon, a personal sustainability journey. And then our fourth speaker is Jane Stricker, Senior Vice President and Executive Director of the Houston Energy Transition Institute at the Greater Houston Partnership, speaking on navigating a successful career in a changing environment. And then late-breaking news, our fifth speaker will be Sindhu Balan. She is an investment principal at Chevron Technology Ventures on many routes to a career destination. And just for the record, Sindhu is a UH alum, so we're very glad to have her. And just a reminder that we are running these sessions Friday mornings, starting at 10 a.m. Each session is going to be roughly an hour, and we're running through February and March with a break for obviously the spring holiday. Next slide, please. We are running this webinar series, which is open to anyone, but for those of you who are students enrolled at institutions of higher education, and not just UH, but any institution of higher education, you can also work towards the Certificate in Energy Leadership. In order to be eligible, you need to include your institution name and also your student ID when you register for this series. And you also need to use the personalized Zoom link that you would have got when you registered to access the webinars. That allows us to verify your attendance. You also need to complete a test, and the tests are stored in our learning management system, Canvas. And there's some notes about that down at the bottom of this slide. And as I say, the quizzes and also any recordings that we're able to make and any PDFs of slides that we can obtain will be included in Canvas as well. The recordings hopefully will be available about a day after each of these webinars. Next slide, please. Okay, during the webinar, please keep yourself with your video off and stay muted unless you are specifically asked to do otherwise. So please keep that in mind, just for discipline in the management of the webinar. So many of you are still have your video on. Please turn them off. Next slide, please. Could you go back a slide? I think we missed one. Actually, back two. Okay, sorry, I did mean to mention this. A note on Canvas. And those of you who are in the Certificate for Energy Leadership program should have received from me yesterday two things. You should have received an email which explains how to access Canvas, and then you should also have received an invitation. And the reason I sent the two messages is quite simple. It turns out that UH has two separate Canvas systems. One of them is used for college credit courses that are applied towards your degree. And that those accounts, those instances of Canvas use your CougarNet credentials, and you have Duo for two-factor authentication. So if you are in the system already for the academic system, that's what you've got. However, the Certificate in Energy Leadership is not a full credit certificate. So we're using the continuing education version of Canvas instead of the academic version. So when you received your invitation to Canvas, it is tied to the email address to which we sent that invitation. And then when you click on that invitation, if you do not already have a continuing education account in Canvas, it will make you register for an account. And then it will allow you to set up a password. If you are already in the continuing education system for Canvas, you would simply need to log in. So hopefully the instructions I sent were clear. I did receive a few questions from people overnight, but I think most people managed to handle this. If after later today, if you find you're still having difficulties, anyone, then by all means let me know, but please don't just send emails to me without trying first. I simply will not be able to answer that number of emails. All right, with that, could we move on to the next couple of slides and get back to Sai's picture, and I can introduce Sai. So I'd like to introduce Sai Gudapati. She is the chair of the Energy Coalition, student energy group. So Sai, over to you.
Thank you, Alan. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here. My name is Sai. As Alan mentioned, I'm the chair for the UH Energy Coalition. Next slide. So, as I said, I'm the chair for the UH Energy Coalition, and we are the largest energy-focused student organization on campus. We're comprised of students from 8 different colleges, and we have partnerships with 34 different student organizations, and we welcome students of all majors to join our coalition and pursue their dreams of a career in energy. Next slide. And so these are some of our upcoming events. We have a networking event with energy professionals on February 21st. We get to play pool with the energy professionals, so network and have fun. We have a career readiness session, crawfish boil, hydrogen symposium, and our annual banquet, which is really fun, and we hope to see everyone there. And here is a QR code for our GroupMe, so you can stay up to date on all our upcoming events. Next slide. And today's speaker is Rey Banatao from X. He's the director of X, formerly known as Google X. Next slide.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Just want to start by saying thanks to Alan for having me come and speak to you all today. Thank you, Sai, for the introduction. Yeah, my name is Rey Banatao. I'm a director and a project lead at X. We used to be known as Google X. I'm going to try to keep the speaking portion to 30 minutes or less. What I'm going to be speaking about today, I entitled it Fall in Love with the Problem. This is really just my personal journey, working in a career that has spanned multiple industries, eventually leading me to a career in climate and impact, and then of course X. And so when I look back on my career, there's a lot of lessons about engaging in long-term projects at that intersection of sustainability and technology. So what I'm hoping today is just to share some of those lessons. This is going to be partly kind of a career advice talk, partly a plug for a career in climate and why I think that's important. I'll just say also, feel free to ask questions during the presentation. To keep us on track, I'll probably just try to entertain 1 or 2 questions, given if someone just has a burning question related to something I had just mentioned or a slide that I have up here, please go ahead. find a way to, I guess, ask the question. I don't know if
Yeah.
Rituja, if there's, or Alan, if there's a way
Yeah.
that you want
Well,
them to ask the
yeah,
question.
if you can go ahead and just put questions in the chat, we'll field them
Okay,
from there. And then we may either just read the questions, or if it's appropriate, we'll ask you to actually speak. But
perfect.
for the moment, just use the chat, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Alan. But it is nice to know people are out there and awake and listening. So feel free, if you have, I don't know if they have access to the reactions, feel free to use the reactions if something resonates with you. Maybe we'll start with a little test. How many of you out there are interested in, I know this is an energy symposium, but that intersection between energy and sustainability or climate? How many folks are interested in that? Great. I'm seeing a ton of hands go up. Awesome. How many folks are interested in entrepreneurship or startups in your career? Hands just keep coming up. Awesome. Okay, great. And we know that the reactions work. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. So let's get into this. I'm going to just give a quick story about my background and where I came from. I grew up in California, born and raised. My family's originally from the Philippines. So I'm a first generation. My parents are first generation, depending on how you define that. Like any stereotypical Californian, I grew up doing a lot of things outside just because of the great weather. And that picture in the lower left corner is our family's 79 Volkswagen Westphalia van. There were a lot of great memories made in that van, driving up and down the West Coast from Canada down to Mexico. And it got us outside. We spent a lot of time in the mountains. We spent a lot of time in the ocean. And that inspired me to just really fall in love with an active lifestyle. And so that's probably the first inspiration in my career, is this connection to the outdoors and nature and being outside and enjoying it. And now that I have my own kids, I know a lot of people say this that work in sustainability, like you want to be able to provide that and these same memories for your kids one day. And so this is the first step in my journey. Next slide, please, Rituja. It was on that path that it took me to different locations. And when you're sitting out in the ocean, so obviously I love to surf, looking back and you're staring at the coastline, you can't help but look at situations where the important infrastructure that provide energy and materials today have a direct effect on the environment, right? Like on the right side there, that's the Chevron refinery in Manhattan Beach. I think a lot of you have heard about different issues that have happened over the years. I think you all are familiar being in Houston and in the Gulf, knowing about the different side effects of what happens when you have infrastructure that ends up faulting or somehow having an effect on the environment. I've not even just surfing, but also just being in different lakes near nuclear power plants where the temperatures are different, right? Because of that. And so, but you know, these infrastructure provide important utility for society today. And how do we manage that? How do we balance that? But it's these ideas that started to plant in my head and made me think about what is the effect that we have as folks working in the technology industry, and not even just in energy, but just working in technology in general. What are the effects that we have on society, and how do we balance those effects, whether they be positive or negative? Next slide, please. So growing up here in Silicon Valley, you know, it's easy to get sucked into the technology industry. So I'm fast forwarding now through my career, having gone through graduate school, postdoctorate work, working in the field of biochemistry, material science, computer science, and how that all combined to, I originally started my career in biotechnology, but that eventually moved into material science. And I also just had this passion for, as I said, the outdoors, and this idea that, and a yearning to want to come back and like start my own company, wanting to bring my own ideas to fruition. And, you know, I was pretty naive about it, but my first attempt to start a company was actually a sporting goods company. I thought, okay, I'm passionate about this thing, but I'm going to some advice I got was, find a way to impact the industry that you're working in, whatever your career was. And so I thought about that. And because I was working in the field of nanoscience and nanomaterials at the time, this is the early 2000s when carbon nanotubes started to take off. There were a lot of publications about it, but it was still a fairly exotic material. I thought, okay, let's just sprinkle in some technology into this idea of a sporting goods company and maybe it'll work. We did some research with UC Berkeley, showed that there were mechanical benefits to using carbon nanotubes in composite materials, which are structural materials. We teamed up with Bayer Material Science, who's one of the pioneers in carbon nanotubes and commercializing them. And so we thought, okay, let's put this into a surfboard. And we did. It worked great. We thought, okay, let's go build a company on this idea. We saw other sporting good companies starting to use carbon nanotubes. We had the proud claim of making the world's first carbon nanotube surfboard, and we also have the claim of making the world's last carbon nanotube surfboard. It was a total waste of time. It didn't work. It didn't sell. The market didn't understand the benefits of nanotechnology in that piece of sporting equipment. And I was pretty naive, right? Like I didn't realize that type of industry needed really was a lot about marketing. And I didn't know anything about marketing. And so it takes more than just technology, right? That was my first learning. And it's important, you'll see this later in my talk, but it's important to understand these types of mistakes and kind of actually they're learnings, right? And you carry that with you. And this is leading into, the title of my talk of why it's important to fall in love with a problem, because the field of being, or the career of being an entrepreneur is going to be fraught with failures or learnings. And you have to really be motivated to solve problems, whatever they may be, to keep yourself going. You're going to have a lot of ups and downs. Okay. So next slide, please, Ratuja. But that opened my eyes to this field of composite materials. So composites, if you're not familiar with composites, they are lightweight structural materials, oftentimes used to deliver things like renewable energy, like in windmill blades. Those are composite materials, oftentimes epoxy resin, fiberglass, carbon fiber. So anything that you would see fiberglass or carbon fiber in, that's typically a lightweight composite. As I said, super important structural material. So not just for sporting goods, automotive, right? You need to lightweight vehicles in order to make them more fuel efficient, all kinds of transportation, including the latest airplanes made by Boeing and Airbus, the Dreamliner. These are carbon fiber composite planes. They deliver fuel efficiency, right? In an industry where these are not going to be electrified, right? Airplanes are not going to be electrified. So you need ways to make them more fuel efficient. This is the role that composite materials have. Super important materials, but they're actually not that sustainable or eco-friendly. So next slide, please, Ratuja. We got introduced to these materials, and we were actually hired by a sporting good company to make another surfboard, but out of bio-based materials. And what we found was these materials were like really inferior to traditional petroleum-based materials. And we thought, well, okay, our nanotech material idea didn't work, but these, like, if people want bio-based eco-friendly materials, I'm sure we could do a better job. So we decided to pivot our company. And sort of the critical moment we had in our careers, this is with my co-founder, was that if we pivoted the company into the direction of eco-friendly materials, and we failed, we wouldn't fault ourselves for having tried. And we realized that, like, there's an opportunity here to do something for an industry. There's a business opportunity because it didn't look like anyone was tackling this idea of more eco-friendly, bio-based composite materials. So we thought, okay, let's go try this. And this ended up being the tagline of our company, make things better. The idea that we could make things better, meaning like impact the planet and make things better, make the climate better, was really appealing to us. But this idea of performance and realizing that like there's a very low bar in bio-based sustainable materials, and we think we can leapfrog that and just make anything better with our materials, was like, that was kind of our light bulb moment. And so we pivoted the company in that direction. Next slide. And this was the result. We ended up calling the company Entropy Resins. As I said, that was our tagline. We used materials that came out of biorefining. So basically the biodiesel industry and the pulp industry. We used co-products that came out of that were either being discarded or in surplus, and used basically chemistry to convert that into thermoset resins, which is what the materials that our business was selling into the composites industry. We called the product Super Sap, and we ended up being one of the first bio-based epoxy resins on the market. We then needed to figure out more, and we realized that there's an opportunity here to really get tangible on the benefits of not just the performance, but then the sustainability aspect. So we were one of the first adopters of the USDA BioPreferred program, which certifies bio-based content in the chemicals industry. And then next slide, please. We had to figure out how to quantify that. And so this is the early or mid 2000s. This is like 2008, 2009. Maybe a lot of you were probably too young to remember this period of time, but like Al Gore's documentary came out. The Toyota Prius was being marketed and starting to take off. Sustainability was starting to become a mainstream idea, and the society was just realizing the importance of sustainability in materials and technology. And so the market was getting more sophisticated, and we needed a way to quantify that to the market. And so we used something called life cycle assessment, or LCAs. How many folks are familiar with LCAs? Just show of hands real quick. This is a really important tool in just the sustainability industry. And so if you're going to be working in energy and sustainability, I would suggest you get familiar with life cycle assessments. Also, another area that you should get familiar with are mass balance calculations, because this is going to be important for the future of the energy and chemicals industry, as both regulators start to apply kind of sustainability rules into how we produce energy or chemicals. These are the tools we have today. There's certainly room for improvement in these methods, but it's all we have today. And so this is kind of right now the field is working at the cutting edge of life cycle assessments and mass balance calculations. And there's going to be a lot of need to improve those types of tools. So we adopted these types of methods. We were able to quantify this, and that's where our business really started to take off. So next slide, please. And what we found was our customers were like-minded about impact on the environment. So the other first that we had was we were one of the first chemical companies to join 1% for the Planet, which is an organization started by the founders of North Face and Patagonia. And the whole idea here is to get companies who are profitable to donate 1% of their sales to environmental organizations. And for us, this was a great way to give back, and in a way to give back where we didn't have to do all of the work, but our business did the work to enable others to go save the planet. And so, that was like a double impact of our company. We're really proud of the impact we had. Next slide, please. And that mattered to our customers. So hopefully you're all familiar with a company called Burton Snowboards. They're the largest. They're one of the inventors of the snowboard industry. They are still a market leader today. And they ended up adopting our material because as a company, they were trying to figure out how to lower their carbon footprint. And the snowboard, which is the core essence of their business, needed to have a lower carbon footprint impact as well to that business. And so they adopted our materials, and our Super Sap logo, is proudly sported on every single Burton snowboard today. So you can walk into any shop, snowboard shop or sporting goods shop. If you see a Burton snowboard, you'll see our little logo there next to the FSC, the Forest Stewardship Council logo. So it's a badge of sustainability. It means there's a lower carbon footprint material in there. And that was one thing that we were super proud of. And it meant something to us, but it was the start of our business, right? Like we're starting to get into larger accounts and getting into accounts more than just sporting goods. We were getting into building industry, automotive, a built environment where carbon footprint mattered, right? And so I'm just trying to share this idea that if you get smart about sustainability without losing performance, there's demand for that, okay? Next slide, please. So, this was like 10 years into our entrepreneurial journey. Our company was eventually acquired in 2017 by a larger chemical company, who I'm glad to say that, my partners work with them today. The brand continues and it continues to grow in its impact. But there was a question that we had asked along the way of that journey was, where does all that stuff go? So even though these materials were lower carbon footprint and were delivering important impact from a carbon footprint perspective, they were not really recyclable by design. And at the end of their lives, they were getting thrown away and the waste was being thrown away and there's no way to recycle them. So next slide, please. And that's where the idea for the next startup came. My co-founder for that came out of UC Berkeley, Department of Chemistry. And he had a technology that allowed this same class of material, these epoxy thermoset resins, to be recycled. And that was through chemistry. And so now for the first time, we had a way to design these materials to be recyclable. Next slide. And so why does that matter? If you look at things like windmill blades, which are super important for renewable energy, and they're growing in demand and impact. And if we're going to lower the footprint of the energy industry, we need them. This industry has been regulated before and continues to be regulated. The first regulation was that these materials were originally made with polyester resins, which carry a lot of volatile organic compounds, in particular styrene. So when you manufacture windmill blades, the first generation of composite blades, they were releasing a lot of emissions, which led to greenhouse gases in the environment. So the industry switched to epoxy resins, which had low to no VOCs. So these blades are finally coming offline, 20, 30 years in the field, and they don't know what to do with them. So the industry is burying them in the deserts. And they're realizing they can't do that anymore. And so this was the opportunity that we saw for our materials. And it wasn't just windmill blades. Electronics are made with epoxy resins. As in my other slide, you saw cars, sporting goods, et cetera. And the industry needs to figure out how to deal with these things at the end of life, even if they're lasting 20 to 30 years. So interestingly enough, even though this industry the parts have a long life cycle, the industry is motivated to figure out how to recycle them. And so, like NREL, Department of Energy this was like going back 10 years ago, we're funding programs to figure out how to make windmill blades recyclable. That was the opportunity we had for Kenora. We invented a whole line of recyclable epoxy resins. 5 years into our journey, we were acquired by our chemical partner, Aditya Birla Chemicals, who's like one of the top epoxy producers in the world. And by 2021, I'm proud to say that Siemens Gamesa adopted the material and made the world's first recyclable wind blade. That blade is installed and producing electricity today. But that project is still only halfway on its own moonshot to make the recyclable wind blade. We still need to figure out how to get those things recyclable. And so, I was really glad to be on that journey with them to see that happen. And then next slide, please. But I kept having more questions, right? So I think this is where the point in my career where I really realized what my goal was in my career. And I never looked back after this. it was this idea that you could combine purpose and profit, and that, you know, thankfully, sustainability started to become a mainstream theme in many different industries. And I think that continues to grow. Even though the economy right now is exactly ikigai. uh, Even though the economy right now is in a tough spot, what we're finding is there's still motivation to work in this space, to fund this space. And I think that's the opportunity we all have in this industry, is to not forget that we have an impact on the planet. And so this is my kind of call to action for you all, is to think about this as you plan the next stages of your careers after UH. Next slide, please. So it was on that journey of Kenora where I started to become familiar with other waste problems, right? I was taking a deeper look at not just composite waste, but plastic waste in general. And this is where I learned a lot about thermoplastics and thermoplastic waste. And my other reckoning in my career was realizing that, okay, I spent, most of my career working on designing new materials. And now I'm realizing that the existing materials that the world had created 50, 60 years ago still doesn't have a good solution. And so, as I said earlier, my family's from the Philippines. This is Manila, the biggest city in the Philippines. And you could see waste like this on the shores there. And, I think you're all familiar with the ocean plastic problem. And so I wanted to figure out how to dedicate the next part of my career to that problem. Next slide. And by, chance, this is a video of a waste facility in San Francisco. And, it wasn't just the Philippines where we have this problem. Even in mainstream waste handling today, arguably North America and Europe are the most advanced in how we handle waste. This is a video of waste going to landfill, and you'll see how much plastic is in this line. This is the landfill line. And a lot of the little things you see there, the black and colored items, are typically plastics that go to landfill. So yeah, there's still a big problem to solve with existing materials. Next slide. And so I somehow just got identified by X as someone who knew something about plastics in this industry. X was thinking about its own moonshot in this space, and luckily ended up finding the opportunity to continue this mission of working at the intersection of sustainability and material science, but now as part of Alphabet, the parent company of X and the parent company of Google. And so our mission is to invent and launch quote unquote moonshots. Hopefully you're all familiar with the moonshot concept, but these are like audacious, grand ideas about how to solve large problems for the world. We have a dual purpose. One is to build companies, build value for Alphabet, and build value for the planet, while also making it better. And so hopefully you understand why this appealed to me, because this was the path that I was heading in my career. And if X had a platform to do that and continue helping me solve the problems I wanted to go after, this was the perfect place for me. And it turned out that this was a great place. A lot of smart, talented people. We have interdisciplinary teams there to go build these moonshots and tackle these types of problems. So I've been having a lot of fun there. This is my 5th year at X. Next slide, please. So I'll tell you a little bit about X and the problem that I'm working on. Next slide. We've been working in the climate space for over 10 years now, and it's been increasing. I think we all realize that climate and climate change is probably one of the biggest issues that humanity is facing right now. And so, what better use of our resources than to go figure out how to tackle that? Using a lot of the resources we have a lot of similar DNA to Google. So we have a lot of compute infrastructure, one of the largest compute infrastructures in the world. we're leaders in artificial intelligence and machine learning. At X, we also have a lot of experts in building complete systems. So that's like hardware, electronics, sensors, and combining all that into full stack solutions. And so applying all of that to climate change is has been really fun. And these are problems that are not solved easily. They're not solved typically not solved in a traditional startup and backed by traditional VCs. So we think there's a sweet spot here for X where it typically takes longer timelines, right? 5 to 10 years to begin to show proof of concept on a problem. So we have a little more patience than I would say traditional venture capital, but we're not quite fully corporate innovation, where it has to be completely in line with the business unit. So we're given a little bit more autonomy and freedom about how to define these moonshots. And we're allowed to use our imagination a little bit to explore these bigger ideas and given a little more time to search the space to find the optimal solution and maximize the value that we can bring in these moonshots. Next slide. So this is kind of our definition of a moonshot. As I said, we need to be solving the world's biggest problem. So a huge problem is necessary. We're a technology first company, so we need to be creating a breakthrough technology. That's our differentiator. So, we won't necessarily build a moonshot if there's not a technology component to it. We feel if there's something that's better served in a non-tech type of solution, there's probably other platforms to go do that. And so we choose not to do that. And lastly, how does that all come together to build a full solution? So that's how we think about the moonshot. Next slide. And so here's our main principles for moonshot thinking or criteria that helps us decide if something's a moonshot or not. First of all, as I said, we need to be going after big ideas, big problems. In order to do that, you need to be leapfrogging and to make fast advancements in these types of spaces, you need to be leapfrogging in terms of solutions. You can't afford to have incremental innovation. And that's where this 10x, not 10% thinking comes in. So oftentimes at the earliest stages, we try to think about and model what is the impact going to be. It might be from a carbon perspective, it might be from a business perspective, but we need to be 10xing these solutions. We also try to work on the hardest things first because we believe that if you can't solve the hardest part of it first, which oftentimes is either tech or business, but oftentimes tech, if you can't bring that to fruition, you might as well put those resources towards either a different problem or a better solution that or broader solutions. So we'll oftentimes decide, okay, if we can't do that, we might as well go try something else. So we try to work on the hardest things first and work quickly and iteratively, and kill or pivot these ideas quickly, right? So we have teams throughout the factory that allow us to explore that quickly and then decide if something is worth going after, we'll put more resources behind it and keep scaling that way. So there's different stages of de-risking that we go after, but we try to work on those hard things first. Number 3 is to make contact with the real world early. And this is really important. We don't want to be working in silos. So oftentimes at the earliest stages of these moonshot projects, we will partner with industry. And that's kind of how I came to even you guys and Alan, one of our partners who works with the University of Houston and is a close partner. We've been working with them for the past couple of years on our solutions. And even though we're still kind of under stealth mode, you wouldn't have heard of us, we're already working with industry out there and getting our tech into the real world to test. And as I said earlier, it's because we need to understand if we're chasing the right things with partners that are going to make sense for the world. We don't want to be working in a bubble and then later realize, oh, we put all these resources and it turns out that's not the right solution, right? So hopefully that makes sense. And this brings us to the title of my talk, Falling in Love with the Problem. If you end up, going back to number 2, if you end up deciding that this was not the right solution, it doesn't mean you don't chase that problem in the future. So oftentimes at X, if we kill a project, maybe the market timing wasn't right, maybe it wasn't the right team, you know, it wasn't the right ecosystem at the time, we still hang on to that intellectual property. We may come back to it later and revive it. And so what happens is actually a lot of our moonshots, it's the third or fourth iteration, maybe over 5, 6, 7 years, right? That thing has gone through multiple ups and downs. But on the third or fourth try, we finally get it right. And that's when these moonshots start to grow, become more public, get out there. And so, you know, projects like Waymo have been around for more than 10 years. Waymo was one of our first moonshots. And so this is where it's important to fall in love with that problem. As I said earlier in my career, you know, it wasn't all success. We had plenty of ups and downs and learnings along the way. We had a lot of self-doubt, but if you're not motivated by the problem itself, you know, you're not going to be able to stick with that in terms of trying to solve it. And so that's where number 4 is really important. And then the last one is related to that. We don't call it failure, we call it learning. You probably learn more from your mistakes than you do your successes. And so if you can adopt that mindset, it's a way to survive those down periods when, you know, you are in a lot of self-doubt. And so if you can, again, if you can adopt that mindset of embracing learning, not failure, I believe it's super critical to this long-term thinking of going after moonshots or building a career in an industry where, you know, you can have a lot of ups and downs. Next slide, please. And so this brings me to, go ahead and click through one more time. This brings me to my moonshot. So my project, as I said, it's in the earliest stages, so I can't tell you too much about it, but just understand that we care about the plastic waste problem. Actually, we care about waste in general. We see, you know, problems in waste and climate as being intersectional. They're economic problems. They're also economic opportunities. That if we can solve them, we can solve oftentimes environmental problems, which is oftentimes related to justice problems, meaning how does it impact humans in certain environments? And so like oftentimes, at least in the case of plastic waste, a lot of these materials were ending up on the shores in places like Southeast Asia. I showed you the picture of the Philippines where my family's from. You know, there's a lot of missing infrastructure there, but then the effect it has on the people living there is huge. And we spend a lot of money either solving health problems or environmental problems to do that. So why not solve that and do it better? Next slide, please. Now, oftentimes problems in this space are system problems as well. Next slide, please. And they're complicated ecosystem problems, meaning there's a lot of folks in the value chain that are required to work together to come up with that solution. Can we advance the slide, please? Great, thank you. This is a slide depicting the different types of plastic materials out there and how they're oftentimes collected in the waste stream and then have gone through sorting and then remanufacturing into new products. And it's the color represents the type of polymer, and then the width of the line represent the general amount of the material flow that's making it through those different interventions. So this, by definition, is a system problem. So you have a complicated set of inputs, complicated set of interventions along the way. And if you follow the top bar, the 82% that leads to black is how much is sent to waste disposal, meaning it's not recycled. So only 18% is actually recycled. And you can see how complicated this is, right? Many of the technologies we have are point interventions, meaning they're like one single intervention in any one of these boxes. That's a tough way to solve a system problem. And so the way we look at these issues are we try to come up with a connection of interventions. Oftentimes our moonshots involve whole platforms. And if you think about, you know, what Google is great at is building platforms. And so we're hoping to leverage that type of skill and resources that we have to build full platforms that can solve these types of issues. Now, we may still come up with point interventions along the way, like better collection systems, better sorting systems, better recycling technologies, but they all need to come together. And that's kind of the nature of a lot of our moonshots. And I'll just point out, if you follow the thinner lines at the bottom, you can see how little makes it back into the original intent of these materials, right? How much make it back into either packaging or fibers. A lot of it is downcycled into structural materials like lumber or decking, but they're not going back to the original intent. And how can we change that paradigm and maximize value? And there's a lot of issues in the recycling industry today. There's also a lot of finger pointing. And so our hope is with moonshots like what we have at X, that we can bring this ecosystem and the industry together and have them working more collaboratively to solve these large system problems. Next slide, please. So this brings me to the end. Hopefully I painted a picture of you through my personal journey about why working in this space is important, things to think about when you're planning your career. And I'll just say one last plug for working in climate is that we all have agency here. We don't just need biochemists or technologists or engineers or scientists. We need lawyers to work on regulation and policy and advocacy. We need finance people to figure out how to fund these types of projects. We need business people to build these types of business relationships. We need educators to teach the next generation about the issues here, and to inspire you all as students to come up with the next generation of ideas that will tackle these large system problems like what we're trying to tackle at X. So I appreciate the time. Thank you again, Alan, for inviting me, and happy to answer any questions. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Ray. That was tremendous, I have to say. I've noticed there are a number of questions that have started coming up in the chat, and I'll go back to one of the earliest ones at this point, but please keep putting questions in the chat if you have other things you want to ask. So Danette, quite early on, asked this question: what do you suggest for networking or finding avenues to connect with others to help you with ideas you come up with? She also goes on to say, obviously, financial independence would be beneficial as a factor, but how do you go about finding others to work with who are like-minded and you trust? Mm-hmm. Your thoughts?
Yeah. If I guess one quick question back is, do you mean in terms of the startup or just working in the climate space?
So Danette, would you like to unmute yourself if you want to get into a dialogue here? And maybe carry on, Ray, see if she can join you in a moment.
In the meantime, oh yes, in general. Okay, great, thanks, Danette. Yeah, I think as far as like working in industry and X goes, first of all, plug for X. We do take interns. We take MBA candidates, and we take PhD or master's candidates who've made it past their first year or first few years and their qualifying exams. And these interns often work in different aspects of our moonshots, whether if you're on the business side, you often will be working on strategy or partnerships. And then if you're on the tech side, obviously anything that we work on, you could have exposure to. So plug for X there, reach out to me, go to the website if you're interested. Oftentimes we start recruiting in the spring and then try to line up candidates by late spring, early summer. And then, these oftentimes are like 2 to 3 month type of internships. So keep an eye out for that. I would say generally you should, in terms of networking, conferences are great. And oftentimes they'll have discounts for students. So that's a great way to network. You have to kind of put yourself out there, attend talks, and meet folks in industry. Get a business card, make sure you have a updated LinkedIn, and find a way to just connect with people that way as well. There's also a lot of, I'll call them like either third-party NGOs or nonprofits who work in these spaces that are oftentimes bringing different consortium partners together, where they could be a combination of academe, industry, et cetera. These are really great hubs. So you can get to know folks like that. So like, Ellen MacArthur Foundation is a good example. In the circularity space, Closed Loop Partners is an example. You should just look up these types of consortiums and see how you might come together. Seems like you all are doing that at UH. Size organization is doing that. So these are great ways to, just some examples. First.
Great. Thanks so much. Sai, were there any of the questions you wanted to pass on to Ray?
Yeah, so the next question they had was from Ryan Luster. He asked, how can we get the Department of Energy to remove wood as a renewable resource?
To remove wood as a renewable resource? Or,
yes, I think that's what he said.
Okay. Meaning that you don't believe it's a renewable resource?
Correct, because at the rate we're cutting down trees all over the world, we're not replacing in a rate that we're taking, and that's leaving a huge impact on carbon. So.
Yep. No, I get it. Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with DOE's definitions and stance on that space exactly. I would be interested in understanding what it means to recover residues. I know that was a thing for a while, and that there are some biomass programs that focus on that. But yeah, I can't speak to Department of Energy. I think if you, my only suggestion would be to, one thing I have done with government programs has been to apply for grants. And so oftentimes talking to program managers when you apply for these grants is a way to get a point of view from Department of Energy on these programs and understand the perspective or definition. So sorry, I don't have advice about how to influence Department of Energy because I'm not in that realm, but I'm sure you could have a dialogue with program managers as they define these programs, right? And making sure they hear your point of view on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So Ryan, while you're there, this abbreviation you put there, could you explain it to me? Because I know Ray recognized it, but didn't mean anything to me.
Oh, ikigai?
Yeah.
So
ikigai.
the slide that Ray put up is a Japanese term for basically finding your purpose in life, and it's called ikigai.
Ikigai.
So
Okay. Thank you.
Google it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you again, Ray.
Sai, any other questions there that you picked up on?
Yeah, so I think it's pronounced Arash. He said, I understand the whole project is related to addressing climate concerns, but are there any more direct projects and careers for people in air quality and climate majors? And he says, I mostly hear chemical engineering majors in relation to energy majors.
Yeah, I think I understand the question. So how would a climate major find an opportunity in this space? I think I'll just talk about what I see out there in terms of climate and impact. So our portfolio, I didn't have a slide on it, but I can share a little bit about it in climate, is our climate portfolio spans many different applications in climate. So air quality could be one of those areas that overlaps. We have projects that actually there's public news about this, so you can look it up, you can Google it. I think Bloomberg was the one to put out the first release. One of our X projects became an external, we call it external Moonshot now, but it's a public project. It became its own independent startup. It's called 280 Earth. It does direct air capture, which is directly capturing CO2 and heat from manufacturing sites and converting that and figuring out how to convert that CO2 into usable mass, right? Or sequestering that CO2 from that manufacturing site. And so, that's one example where, sure, I'm sure they want chemical engineers, but someone who understands that business as a climate major is super important. How would you navigate that business? Working with regulators, with governments. Oftentimes you have to work with, your customers are large manufacturers. So understanding that dynamic is going to be super important. I don't think you just have to be a climate major. You could be any kind of major to do that. As I said earlier, we all have agency in this. So it's more about how you tailor your coursework, your own interests, and then, frankly, how do you tell your story and some ways spin your story that is in line with what you're looking for in your job or in a job opportunity or a company you want to go work for. So I think, as I said, we all have agency. It's more about how you tailor your own path and make it look appealing to that market. And I think there's opportunity for everyone, frankly. You don't even just have to be a climate major. Yeah.
Great. Just a couple of other follow-on things here that I've seen in the chat and things that you mentioned as well, Ray. You talked about X having opportunities for internships.
Yeah.
Could you provide a link or something or some way that people can follow up on that? And related to that, there was also a question. This is very much up to you. But are you open to LinkedIn requests from people?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Okay, so if you
could
could
be in your LinkedIn request, just say you attended the UH talk. So I have.
You know where it came from. That's great. Yeah, I'm sure you get inundated with requests. So I wanted, before putting that out as an option, I wanted to make sure you were okay with it. So if you can give us some way to follow up on the internships as well, that would be very helpful, and I'll circulate that after when. If you've got it now, give it to me. Otherwise, later on is fine.
Yeah. And I think you can easily Google the X website and then look up internships. Usually they'll be in our job postings. They'll list interns or residents, and they're listed as individual roles. Sometimes there's only a few. I think it's very early in the year, so there's probably only a few up right now. But I can try to get you in touch with a program manager who helps consolidate applicants.
If you could provide that information to me, I'll pass it on to the students. That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. All right. Any other questions out there, Sai?
Yeah. Luis Aguero, he asked, how to remove high cost barriers of entry into renewable/sustainability businesses as an entrepreneur?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. How to remove the high cost barriers of entry into renewable/sustainability businesses as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's always going to exist in any like startup or technology, right? There's always a high cost barrier to entry, right? I think most investors understand that. So that's not going to be a surprise, right? You don't have to come out of the gates with a solution that's already below cost parity. Now, of course, it helps if you do like that. That's kind of a no-brainer. If you have a solution that you have, like you can quickly get to cost parity or better, like that's a no-brainer. But oftentimes you don't. As I said, investors understand that. So it's more important about your roadmap. Like when you go out there and you're talking to investors or anyone for that matter about your solution, you have to think through that roadmap and how that all connects. So I'll use my startup Canora as the example. When we started, as an example, the materials that we were competing with, the incumbent materials, sold for like $2 a kilo. Our first lab scale manufacturing of that chemical was $100 a kilo. That didn't scare anybody, right? As I said, they understand that. Partly, you can eat some of those costs yourself. Like you have to have enough funding to subsidize that, and your investors understand that. Your customers in some cases will understand that, but they need to understand what the value you're bringing that's worth paying a little bit more or a lot more. So in the case of Burton Snowboards, they understood this because we showed them the roadmap of how we were going to get to $2 a kilo at scale. And they were clear, we won't adopt your material until you get to cost parity. So that was our target. And that was something we mapped out with our manufacturing partners, was how to get there. And, it gave us a focus on the chemistry side and our chemical engineers about how to think about manufacturing this as we got to larger and larger scale. So that played a role in our pilot. That played a role with our manufacturing partner as we got to the tons of scale and tens of tons scale. And so that's the roadmap. When I say roadmap, that you need to connect the dots for people and tell that story. So that was my experience. It may not be everyone's experience, but I think that's the best approach in terms of mapping those cost hurdles.
Great. kind of running out of time, but I'll toss this question out. And this is one from Armin. He said, you spoke about making contact with the real world as one of your principles. And now speaking from the standpoint of a student, for those of us still studying, how do we know when we have officially made it to the real world?
Oh, I think the obvious one is you all getting your first job, moving on from academe into industry. There's a lot of learning that also happens outside of the classroom. So, highly advise if you're in a position where you can go take an internship, that's a great way to get your foot in the door into companies. To me, that's the real world, right? Is like, you need to get out there, learning in the field, solving the industry problems and the practical problems around that intersection of technology and business. Because look, let's face it, we live in a capitalist society. In order for technological solutions to keep moving forward, you need to have business supporting that. And what better way to learn than to actually be out there? So get out there, get that internship, get that first job. Do what you can. It's okay if you're not starting in the exact space where you imagine yourself ending. Think about these things as all stepping stones to get there.
Now that's great. Good advice there from you. And I see we've hit 11 o'clock. I know you're a couple of hours ahead of us, Rey. So Rey had an early start this morning. Thanks again for joining us. Much appreciated. That was an incredible talk, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of very positive feedback from everyone who's in this meeting. So thanks again, Rey. We very much appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise and experience.
My pleasure. Thanks again, Alan. And if anyone has follow-up questions, like, I don't know if Alan, you could consolidate them, and
I can try to do that
right back to you all. Yeah.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Rey.
Take care.
Thanks a lot. And we'll close off the recording here.